A very well, good morning to everyone. Dr. Fahim from the World Marketing Summit Group. Dr. Bhatia, many thanks for your encouraging speech. Founder of World CSR Day. Dr. Namgwandi, Education Minister of Namibia. My fellow colleagues, ambassadors, and particularly the ones from Latin America, I really appreciate to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, perhaps I will give a sort of little bit different approach and not particularly accurate in the sense that I took the chance to be on the 2000 year in the United Nations and later on 2005 for an intersessional review of the MDGs and later on the 2010. So I would like to share more than anything some views, some thoughts with you regarding how we visualize for perhaps a more international diplomatic point of view, but I just wanted to highlight this great opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first and foremost, I would like to commend the organizer in putting together this milestone international event, which I personally deem as well thought out. Our focus is right where it should be. The role of marketing in creating a better world and beyond, contributing to the full achievement of the 8 Millennium Development Goals. One of the most important global political consensuses of the last decades, embodied in the 2000 United Nations Millennium Declaration. Thus, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to World Marketing Summit Malaysia 2013 as the organizing for inviting me to be part of this important conference and share some thoughts as we celebrate this week, last Tuesday in New York, the opening of the General Assembly at the United Nations, centered, among other global concerns, exactly in the MDGs. The head of states and governments, civil society, NGOs, and all the stakeholders are already looking to 2015, taking in account what was agreed by 189 leaders at the start of the new millennium in an attempt to agree ways to ensure a better future for everyone in our planet Earth. Being in the opening ceremony makes me feeling that the planners of this summit have their pulse on the issues facing humanity today, and their moves to address those issues through events such as this is most commendable and must be deeply highlighted. This summit has great timings for events all over the world, where we are discussing similar issues like you today. I do not have to tell you, those of you that supporting programs that promote the inclusion of the MDGs is business. In business is simple good economics. We must remember that the Millennium Development Goals Declaration is a shared vision of the international community in which underlies the idea of building alliances and a global partnership for development, which extend to all levels, between developed and developing countries, donors and grantees, between the state and the private sector, and among all the actors of our global village. But indeed, international cooperation remains as the basic assumption of the fulfillment of the MDGs. That is why this event is so important and relevant. Dear friends, I would like to pay a tribute to the business leaders in this room and representatives of the civil society organizations. I know that many of you are already working with the United Nations Global Compact through the partnerships like Business for Peace, launched last week in New York at the Global Compact Leaders Summit. The Women's Empowerment Principles, equality means business, and action hubs, like the UN Business Partnership and the Social Enterprise Hub. So encouraging but less known initiatives. Your following actions will certainly make a difference. We must not forget that the UN Global Compact is the world's largest corporate citizenship and sustainability initiative. Since its official launch on 26 July 2000, the initiative has grown to more than 10,000 participants, including over 7,000 businesses in 145 countries around the world. What to say about the role of the non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and other civil society organizations within the work of the United Nations? Over 30,000 have established a relationship with the UN and play a key role at the major conferences and indispensable partners for UN efforts at the country level. And yet, we know that your agenda and our work remain unfinished. We can be proud of what you have already achieved, but we cannot yet be satisfied. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, today this summit focuses on the business community's vital interest in sustainable practices and operations, in making shared experiences and best practical successful. Today, you will see that bringing our world into greater balance requires, among others, greater balance between women and men. Sustainable development requires all of us. It is built on a foundation of equal rights, opportunity, and participation. For example, when women are empowered and can earn an income, they invest back into their families and communities. This drives hunger, poverty, and malnutrition down and improves standards of health, education, and well-being, which is good for all of us. Once again, we want to recognize companies and stakeholders from whom business means equality, because through equality, we will become more free and better citizens. Indeed, some days ago, a former Chilean Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and now Assistant Secretary General and Assistant Administration of the UNDP Regional Bureau of Latin America and the Caribbean, remind us in an article how important it is today for companies taking care of the human rights of its employees, and how Latin America is implementing the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. This, after a huge exercise of nearly 1,000 representatives of national and multinational companies, governments, trade unions, civil society, and indigenous peoples' organizations gathered in Colombia to discuss the impact of business on human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the business sector can play a critical role in promoting inclusive economic growth by implementing innovative business models that are positive for the environment and for the social and economic development, while promoting a rights-based approach beyond the traditional concept of corporate social responsibility. Today we know that societies that are more just, more equitable and inclusive are more stable and secure. We didn't know perhaps that in the past. It is a tough paradox because companies can be an engine for equality and prosperity, but they can also affect development. With collaborative efforts between government, business, and civil society, there are great and unlimited opportunities to build more equitable and just societies. In that sense, I have been learning with passion how leading companies and stakeholders present here today are tackling and responding to the so-called creative marketing. This is the sort of partners that our societies need today. Not just trade for trade, business for business, zero sums, win-to-win results, or merely brand marketing. It is that, but much more than a simple sum. What lies behind is the art of looking at something from a different perspective, what others don't normally see. The ability to visualize something extraordinary from the ordinary. In other words, to recover the capacity of astonishment that so many absences do to our world and to other societies. And where's the answer? Very simple. In the diversity, as a driving force that channels the streams of business today. Understanding the flows of diversity requires, however, wisdom. We don't only need concerned and vocal consumers. What we more need today are empowered citizens. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a world very different from the one which saw the birth of the United Nations and the other agencies, IMF, World Bank, immediately after the end of the Second World War. A new world issuing not from war or from the ideological struggles waged during the second half of the 20th century, but from the knowledge, science, technology, and information revolution occurring in the 21st century, which is now knocking at our doors and creating opportunities for material and spiritual progress for billions of people that could not have been imagined or dreamed of by our grandparents, by our parents, and even by many of us only a few decades ago. A new world no longer divided by walls and iron curtains, but connected and integrated by the bridges of globalization, and increasingly free exchanges of goods, services, ideas, and, most important, people. A new world in which we face dangers, challenges, and opportunities that are also new, which often work beyond the frontiers, even and jurisdiction of our own countries, and which must therefore be tackled by distinguishing where the responsibility of some people ends and where the responsibility of others begins, and can be successfully dealt with only by harnessing the force of the unity of all and the responsibility of everyone. In the social sphere, like my dear colleagues and Latin American countries, and although 2 years still remain before the deadline, recently, a lot of Latin American countries have announced some days ago in New York with great satisfaction that they have attained practically, if not most, the majority of the Millennium Development Goals set by the United Nations in year 2000. We are nevertheless redoubling our efforts to attain the remaining goals by 2015, working to ensure that other countries which have requested our help can also achieve them and participating actively in the definition at the United Nations of a new global sustainable development agenda beyond 2015, with new targets, goals, and responsibilities that are specifically measurable, bold, and feasible for developing and as well for developed nations. We also believe, as the Secretary General of the United Nations, that the Millennium Development Goals have been the most successful tool in the history of the world to combat global poverty. In that sense, we have made ours, the last UN report, a new global partnership eradicating poverty and transforming economies through sustainable development. But the homework is far away of being completed. Despite that Chile remains the Latin American country with the best performance in terms of achieving the MDGs, a deep social unrest expresses in the streets for a development more centered on people and their rights. That's the Chilean paradox. One lesson that my country has learned of its history is that the values of democracy, peace, and civil amity are much more fragile than we usually think, so we neither can nor should ever take them for granted. They are somewhat like a tree that needs to be watered every day in order not to wither and dry up. Such care must be provided not only in deeds, but also in words, in gestures, in formalities, because all of them can and must be placed in the service of truth, justice, reconciliation, and peace. Latin America approach is that there is a very closely relationship between the quality of democracy, economic progress, and social justice, since they are mutually reinforcing, so that the decline of one of them will sooner or later have an adverse effect on the others. There is no doubt, for example, that if there is a difficult to guarantee political stability and social peace when there is too much poverty and inequality. Our task is thus not only to strengthen our democratic institutions, but also to promote economic and social policies based on freedom, responsibility, justice, equality of opportunity, poverty reduction, private initiative, and respect for fundamental rights, because such policies are the main engines of development of nations and peoples. Despite the devastating earthquake and seaquake that struck my country in 2010, with the sixth most serious in the known modern history, 8.8, and despite the global economic crisis, which began, as you know all, in 2008, and is far to be gone, Chile has resumed strong growth. Our per capita GDP, which 4 years ago was about 15,000, is now 20,000, and we have almost full employment. But numbers doesn't mean at the end anything. Poverty and inequality are declining, and real wages are rising rapidly. But all measurements show that the quality of other education and health, despite improving, we are providing increased incentives to innovation and entrepreneurship, and better protection to consumers, workers, and the environment than in the past. In other words, I think we are learning the lesson. At the same time, we have revealed almost everything destroyed by the earthquake and tsunami. Of course, Chileans are very proud of the contribution which its public policies have made to attainment of these and other goals. But the credit must go to our citizens, the Latin American citizens, who have learned always from nothing to anything to all. And in order to grow and reduce poverty and excessive inequalities, nothing works better than to rely on the skills of people themselves, to expand their freedoms and unleash the forces of imagination, creativity, innovation and entrepreneurship that lie with the heart of each, and I'm sure in the heart of every man and woman in this room. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the image of a country is built by people that has values and traditions. Marketing a country or a continent is not only showcasing the beauty of its culture and geography, but it goes beyond. It is the ability to share with others the best that the human heart has to offer through its infrastructure, business facilities, and relationship. Understanding a country must and might be the first path of integration and respect. In a bigger picture, we all face the same problem, and the variation, perhaps, might be on the intensity and nuance. What we know today is that we only have one planet, and we all live together as one, the human nature. Most of you might have an idea of what Latin America is today, but we are gathered about sharing some examples and good practices, and I would translate to you very briefly what Chile has been doing in the past years towards the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. Just some tips. MDG 1, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. As my fellow colleagues of some countries here today, the incidence of extreme poverty has been falling down and in our case particularly between 1990 and 2011. At the same time and in the same period, there are striking examples of poverty reduction in the region in terms of percentage of malnutrition in children under the age of 6. In the case of Chile, from year 2000, we voluntarily established a contribution of $2 on all international air tickets in order to allocate these resources for initiatives to fight poverty and hunger. MDG 3, for example, promote gender equality and empower women. We know that we have a pending homework. In the case of Chile, significant advantages and also increase of women participation from 31% to 47% last year. However, as in all our countries, it remains to make progress in the labor participation of women and also in local post of popular election. In the case of the sensibilities of health, and particularly MDGs 4 and 5, reduce child mortality, and MDG 5, improve maternal health, Latin America has done a great success. In our case in particular, we can find very positive parts towards goals related with maternal and infant health, showing the effectiveness and consistency of more than 50 years. At the same time, among others, the mortality rate from children have been dropping down. The same case are applied in the case of achieving and reducing live births between the last 2 decades. In the case of MDG 6, for example, HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, great successes of Latin America, particularly in Chile, the prevalence in pregnant women has remained low, reaching the 0.06% in the year 2012, and being the goal to keep it around 0.05%. Meanwhile, AIDS mortality have declined in Chile from 3 to 2.5 per 100,000 in the period 2000-2011, approaching the goal of 1.7 for the year 2015. And we could go along with lots of other shared experiences and numbers. But what we want to focalize today is that we have and we hold our grandchildren's future in our hands. As my predecessor in this podium said, there is no shortage of goodwill, innovation, and commitment. Let us determine today that we will, in our lifetime, see the last child ever to die from starvation, that we will see the last bereaved mother and father to lose a son in a senseless world, that we will see the last school-age child denied an education because that child's family or nation is enmeshed in poverty. It is in our power to do so. Let us awaken this sleeping giant, this silent half of humanity, to open the eyes of the world to what is possible to achieve. Let us dream, as our human ancestors have done it before along history. But more than any dream, let us ensure that this century will bring an era of peace and prosperity of all. And remember, to build a sustainable future, all of us need to work together. It's also been said, some people see things as they are and ask why. Others imagine how they could be and ask why not. You are people who imagine how things could be, and you are dealing and leading this change. I know that each of you, as people of achievement, will continue to lead your companies with great distinction, but I'm confident you will also raise your voices in the corridors of power on behalf of those who have no voice, the disinherited of this world. I dare come to ask you to share your considerable talents and experiences with those who are looking to fulfill their own potential and to ensure that your business are partners with governments and civil society in creating a better world for all. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, a final reflection. After visiting Malaysia and passing through Penang 90 years ago, in days of turbulence and despair, the Chilean Nobel Prize-winning poet Pablo Neruda, already working for his country in this part of the world, left us a very important message about destiny. Impressing Penang, he wrote, and I quote, "So many wars, such repeated destruction, and so much time and rain have come down over the streets of Penang that I wonder if it is still there. We cannot be afraid about the will of the people," said Neruda. After 100 years, Penang and its people are still there. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the goal under Malaysia Vision 2020 of becoming a developed and high-income nation by the end of the decade is also a goal shared by my country and by many of our Latin American friends. Chile has targeted the objective to become a developed economy for the year 2018. But we believe and share the view that human development is a development paradigm that is about much more than the rise or fall of national incomes. Indeed, it is about creating an environment in which people can develop their full potential and lead productive and creative lives in accordance with their needs and interests. We also think, like others, that people are the real wealth of nations. In that sense, the development of intellectual capital remains for Chile as an imperative. Development is thus about expanding the choices people have to lead lives that they value, and is also thus about much more than economic growth, which is only a means, perhaps a very important one, of enlarging people's choices. Perhaps it is time to ask ourselves, for whom the bell tolls? Sometimes I have the impression that we are too anxious, that we want them told to only for us, and not for our fellow human beings. Despite the development achieved, we must be clear. In 2015, 1 in 5 people in the world will be still living incomes below US $1.25 a day. We must never forget the teachings of time from centuries over centuries. No man is an island, entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Each man's death diminishes me, for I'm involved in mankind. Therefore, send me not to know for whom the bell tolls, because it tolls for thee. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I do really wish you all the success on these 3 days of working and deliberation. I am totally sure that the World Marketing Summit Malaysia 2013 will contribute to create a better world. Doing good, doing well. I encourage you to make a real difference. Thank you.